Okay, my name is Samara Rice, and I'm here at EADOC Support. I'm going to do the session today on change order lifecycle. I'm going to take you through a couple things. We're going to start off with an RFI coming in, and we're going to flag it with a risk item. We're going to change that risk item into a CCR or a potential change order, and then we're going to create a change order from any of the existing TCOs that have been approved. After we kind of go through that whole cycle, I'll show you how they show up on the pay estimates. Next week's session is going to be pay estimates, so we'll kind of follow on from there in some aspects. And after we kind of cover all of that information, I'm going to show you how to report on your changes kind of at all different levels of the system, so we can kind of get you the information that you need. Okay. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to show my screen here. Can you see the? Awesome. Okay. So we're going to start out. Most of what I'm going to do today is going to be from the PM/CM team point of view. I am going to switch into the contractor view just briefly to kind of provide a cost proposal. But primarily we're going to be looking at the system and the change order lifecycle from the project management team. So we've gotten this RFI in, and as you'll notice here, there's going to be a change, right? So the model that was requested or specified in the specs is no longer available. We've got two options here, and obviously this is a standard RFI. We've got an image that's associated, and then we've also included some web links to each one of the models. So if we wanted to check out the pricing, we could certainly do that. So if I take a look at these two kind of options, one's about $35 for each section, and then the other one, if we just take a quick look on the other one, that one's going to be about $4 for each section. So it's obviously going to cost some sort of price difference when we change to these two different models, one of these two different models, and I can recognize that as soon as the RFI comes in. So what I really want to do before it becomes, a potential change order, I want to flag it with a risk item. I've got a couple different ways to do it. The easiest way is to come over here to this orange or red sticky note, and I click on it. And I can either select an existing one, so if you have something that's already in the pipeline, that keeps adding on, I can select it from the drop-down here, or I can create a new one on the fly. So I leave that top item blank there, and then I'm going to select my contract. This one's obviously for the construction contract. I'm going to enter in a description, so let's go with change in metal roof. I don't think it's going to take any extra days because they're both standard products, so it's no big deal. I am going to enter in an additional amount. So, one of those was $5 more than the other one. I'm just going to take a guess at it, and I'm going to say it's probably going to be, I don't know, around an extra $30,000. My probability right now, it's pretty high because we have to actually change. It's not kind of an option. We're going to definitely select something different, but we're not sure on the exact amount, so I'm going to go with a 75% probability, and I'm going to attach it. This is creating that risk item on the fly. So now I've got that risk sticky there. I can also go to my risk tab by clicking kind of on the item description or the number here, and it's going to take me directly to that risk item number 15. So if I click on it, I can see that risk item number 15. I'm going to close my browse box over here. So in that one attachment of that risk sticky, it also creates the risk document for you at the same time. I can continue updating this risk item. If I take a quick look at my risk summary, we'll come back and spend a little more time on that. I can see I've got several open risk items for this particular project and this specific contract, which is called the construction contract. I can continue updating it. Right now you can see my amount is $30,000, 75% probability, and then I get my expected by multiplying those two together, or the system does that for me, I should say. If I click on that line item, I can update it. So say we've gotten more relevant pricing information in. So I'm going to click Edit. And you'll notice I don't have an option to delete my previous note. That's fine. What it's there for is historical tracking purposes. So you can see here the first amount that we expected was $30,000. In this case, we actually found out, that it's going to be closer to 50,000. Our probability is a little higher because we've gotten, a little bit more detailed information. We've checked out some other options. This appears to be the best option. So I'm going to go ahead and upgrade it to a 95% probability, and I'm going to click Save. You can see my link down here to my RFI, my roofing materials RFI that's pending. And then you can see my new note in there. It gives me a new date when it was updated, my updated amount, and then my updated probability too. That's going to be reflected in my summary. So just another quick look at it there. It updates in the summary automatically, obviously. So now what happens when that RFI is closed out? We've answered the question, we've selected one of the options, and now it's really definitely going to become a potential change order that we have to negotiate the costs on. Well, what you probably want to do is start by adding that potential change order, or in this case a CCR. So what you'll do as the construction team or project management team, this can either actually go kind of two ways. You can certainly have the contractor initiate these, but by and large, we see most of the owners or CM teams initiating the potential change orders, and they send them over to the contractor for their pricing information. So what you definitely want to do is select the correct contract. I've got several options here, and I'm going to go with the construction contract. This, of course, kind of presupposes that you actually have your contract in the system already. You certainly can't use the change order tab without any contracts, and I'm sure we'll cover that at another time as to how to create contracts in the system. So you just know that you need to have one in the system before you can kind of use those CCR, PCO tabs and roll them up into change orders. I've got a subject here, so I'm going to go with change in metal roofing. Old model. And let's see what our model options were. We'll just go back over to that RFI, and we're going to select this one. All right, so we specified our design change. You've got several other fields down here that you can track. Of course, these are all optional. In this case, I'm going to say the change date. It's just going to go ahead and be today. My schedule ID, I'm not too worried about tracking that. I do want to kind of enter in my not to exceed amount. And again, this is kind of for the contractor. He's going to see it. You're going to see it. He's going to see it. And it's there to kind of give you guys both a point of reference, right? For you guys to check on your end when you get a cost estimate back, and for him to kind of be aware of what you are expecting in the situation. You can assign it to a set, just like you can assign your schedule of value items to sets. Funding and budget. Your contractor's not going to see those two fields, so they're really for your internal tracking purposes. If you have your funding and budget set up, you certainly can use it. Otherwise, feel free to ignore it. I'm going to go with state funding, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go with my construction contingency budget. So obviously I have a regular budget and I have my contingency. Because this is an additional cost, I'm going to go ahead and stick it in that contingency budget. I'm also going to reference a couple things. One, I'm going to reference that RFI, which was RFI number 7. Okay, great. So I'm just going to type that in there, and the system's going to auto-suggest for me so I can select it. And I also want to reference my risk item, but I'm going to do that with the sticky as opposed to my link here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save, and I'm going to attach that risk item just to kind of keep track of it. And it was 15, so I can select it from the drop-down and click Attach. Keep in mind that your risk items, they're internal documents only. They're not available to share. So as the CM team, you're not, you can obviously print out a summary or an individual document and share it, or, create a PDF and share it that way. But within EADOC, you're not going to be able to share your risk items outside of your organization. So you won't be able to share them with the contractor. You're not going to be able to share them with the owner's team. They're really for your own internal tracking process. And each organization can create their own. They're not, as I said, shareable, so you don't have to worry about somebody else outside your organization seeing them. Okay, so I've attached my risk item. I filled out all the fields that I'm ready to fill out, and I'm going to go ahead and submit it over to the contractor. I'm going to click that Submit button. I'm going to come down here. Mortensen today is my contractor, so I'm going to send it over to them. I'm going to assign it. I'd like a turnaround time of a week so they can get us the information back. And I'm going to upgrade my priority a little bit to high. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. So this is where we're going to come in as the contractor. And I'm just going to kind of overlay it right here. Actually, let's make it a little bigger so you guys can see everything. So he's just gotten in a new, I didn't want to close that. He's just gotten in a new CCR right there, number 4. That's the one that we just sent over to him. He can see, so he can't see that funding and budget, but he can see that not to exceed amount. Again, that number, it's not going to prevent anybody from submitting something above and beyond that. It's going to just be there for reference purposes. So when he creates his response, clicks respond, he's going to say, this is my cost proposal. He doesn't really have any comments here. What he wants to come down and enter in are either one of a couple sections. He can either just enter in an amount right in this field here and attach his, Excel spreadsheet as backup documentation. But I kind of want to show you another feature just in case you're not familiar with it. We have this section called cost details. Most of the time it's checked, so you often won't see it. But you can, through us, require your contractor to use the cost details section. So this area here would blank out the amount, and the only way to get a value in there would be for him to fill out the cost details. So it is something you can require for your team if it's something that you're interested in using. The system will remember your amount here. So for any contract this particular contractor is dealing with, he can enter in his separate bond, overhead, and profit percentages, and the system will calculate it. Okay, so we're going to add in a direct cost. And in this case, we're just going to say it's the roofing, right? And we're going to go with, let's go with feet. And we're going to do an extra 3,000 feet. And my material cost, it's going to be the extra, $7 per foot. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And you'll notice it doesn't automatically populate right now. What it has to do is go through, take a look at all of your inputs, and then calculate the percentages. So when I click Save, that's when it's going to kind of update that information. So we can see here my new amount, expected amount is at 23,000. And then we've got that line item for the material cost. If I wanted to add in labor, I certainly could. Maybe this particular product is going to be a little trickier to install than we had first estimated. So we're going to go ahead and click Edit and add in some labor costs. So I'm just going to say men. And I'm going to say it takes, it's going to be, 5 guys. And let's see, do we have an option here? For roofers, we do. How awesome is that? Okay, so we're going to have, so each person, it's going to take them an extra maybe, 10 hours, and their hourly rate is $20. Let's see where that gets us. And, well, that's not what I expected. Aha. Okay, so. So let's do hours. Yeah. And let's up it. Well, no, let's do 5 minutes. And it's going to take each of them, I guess, maybe 40 hours. So it's going to take them all a whole week. And let's see. It's still not getting me quite as high as I want, so let's go in and maybe we'll make this a team. And it's going to be 1, and it's going to be an extra, let's go higher than that, 500 man hours. So we're up to $34,000, and their expected cost was $50,000. So far we're doing pretty well. And let's see, do we need any other costs in here? I think we're pretty good for now. We'll just stick with that $34,000. So you can see how you get your subtotal. It calculates the bond for you, the overhead, and the profit, and gets you a grand total down here, which also translates up into the amount field here. So John feels like he's pretty satisfied with this estimate. He's going to go ahead and submit it over to the contractor. I'm sorry, he's going to submit it over to the PM team. So let's take a look from Peter's perspective now. So here we are. We've got that CCR number 4. So if I click on it, I can see down here I've got my additional cost for the new product. There's my total. It hasn't been approved yet. Luckily, it's not going to cost any extra days. I also get an amount added up here, which is great. It kind of shows me what kind of proposals I've gotten in. And, you know, maybe John, he sends over 2 proposals, right? He's got this one, and then he also found, you know, another product that was a little bit less expensive. While we were doing our research, he was doing his. He just wants to send that over too. So let me just quickly create another one. And it'll just take me 2 seconds. We're going to update here. This is going to be an extra 10. All right, so if we take another look, John sent over another estimate. Maybe. There it is. Yeah. So he's got that second one in there. Same price, maybe different product, so we can take a look. And it looks like, yeah, it's about the same. It does cost a little bit extra per foot. And so we've got a different, we don't have a different price. Okay. Hang on 1 second, guys. I see that. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so that updated. Okay, so let's take another here. He sent it back over. There, we've got our updated amount. So that's actually a little bit closer to what we were expecting. So if we come back to that CCR, now we've got 2 options here from the contractor. He sent us over 2 proposals, and you'll notice up here my amount added, it actually doubles or includes both of them, right? Because neither one has been approved yet. So this is one of the little kind of gotchas that we see pretty often, is that you have 2 options in here and you've got neither one approved, so your amount added up here, it kind of combines both of them. Also, as far as I like to say, I think best practice is to have only 1 response approved, so I would just reject any of the other ones. Let's go for that $44,000. You're expecting to pay $50. It's still a savings, and it's a better product. So I'm going to go ahead and select number 2, and as the CM team, I'm going to click Approve. It gives me an option. I'm going to select Approve, and I'm going to click Save. As I said, I'm going to go back to my CCR. As I said, best practice, in my opinion, is to reject any of the ones that you don't want. So you'll see up here my amount added, it's still doubled. If I close it, it certainly will show only the approved amount, but I always like to make sure before I close the CCR that up here, right in that field, is I'm seeing what I am expecting to see. So in this case, I'm going to select my first proposal, which we're going to reject. And if I go back to my CCR, I can see here I've got one that's approved, one that's rejected, and my amount added is actually exactly what I want. So I'm going to close this out. So that's kind of the first step. I know not everybody has kind of that potential change order back and forth with their contractor. Sometimes you just have an amount that you negotiate together, and then you issue the change order directly. You don't have kind of price negotiation necessarily in the system. We can certainly enable that for you to bypass this next step. What next step is allows you to either roll up or have a secondary approval process. So sometimes, that CCR PCO, that's handled kind of at the project manager level, but that change order approval actually changing the contract value, that has a whole nother set of approval processes, sometimes with different construction projects. It also allows you to roll up multiple potential change orders or contract change requests into one change order. So maybe you have 5 in a month, you want to roll those all up into one change order and have, the board actually approve all of that. So it really just depends on the approval processes and also if you want to kind of combine different proposals into one change order. All right, so what I'm going to do to start off my change order is click New. Again, this is probably going to be the CM team, the owner team doing this. Either one can certainly do it. I don't have a number yet, and I want to make sure that I've got my contract selected, construction, that's where we're at, and I'm just going to call this one October. And it's going to pull in any change order, potential change orders that have not already been assigned. So I might have some details that I want to put in here. I'm going to go ahead and leave it blank and click Save. You'll notice I don't have any money in there yet. What's going to happen is the system's going to look at that contract and look at all the change order, potential change orders that have been approved and closed, and it's going to pull them in when I click that Save button. So you can see here we had a change in the duct shaft, and then we also got that change in metal roofing. So that's the one we worked on today. This obviously had been approved and closed previously, and it adds the two together. Also up here, I get a summary of what's going on. There's my original contract value, approved to date. My contract plus changes, so that's kind of my new contract value, and then down here I've got my new amount and then what my contract amount is going to be after all the changes have been approved today. We certainly really haven't dealt with any days, but they work very similarly. You're going to enter them in that PCO where the contractor is, and they're going to roll up just like the dollars do. I'm pretty satisfied that everything's in place, so I'm going to go ahead and click Submit. I guess let me show you one thing. Another thing that we kind of see sometimes is maybe you haven't approved that change order request or that contract change request or that potential change order yet, and it doesn't automatically pull in. You do have the option to add it. If I scroll down, I click Edit and I scroll down, I get that little Add box, and in the drop-down will appear any approved and closed. Obviously, we've already got 3 and 4 on here, so we're not going to add those in again. But if you didn't have closed, it didn't show up, you can certainly come in and add it again. All right, so I'm just going to cancel, and I'm going to submit it over. Obviously, you want to share this with the contractor. Maybe the city needs to approve it. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to both. Once it's pending, you're going to have the ability to have that approval process. I'm going to briefly kind of go over your options. You can have a single approval process where if one person kind of first come, first serve selects. You can have a multi-approve process. So if you need several people to sign off on it, you can certainly do that. And that can happen in a couple different ways. It can be a sequential one, or it can be, 5 people need to approve it, and anytime any of those 5 people approve it, once all of that happens, then it's ready to go. So you can have a couple different options with your approval process. I kind of selected for ease today just that single first come, first serve approved. So my change order is approved, and I'm going to go ahead and close it. Once that change order is approved and closed, it's automatically going to populate on the pay estimate. So if we come here and say the contractor is ready to create a new one, and in fact, I already have him signed in, so let's go ahead and do that. So he's going to come over here. He's going to create a new pay estimate, and again, let's go ahead. He doesn't have access to that contract. All right, so we'll do it as a contractor. As the CM. So I'm going to go ahead and click New. I've got my contract in there. I've selected the right contract. This is going to be October 2014, and I'm just going to go from the first day to the last day of the month. This to date becomes kind of important when you're pulling in those change orders. This is another place where we see people get hung up a little bit. That's going to reflect, it's going to be pulling in any of the change orders that were approved before this date. So if I made this, to the second, it's not going to pull in my change orders because I approved them today. So it doesn't pull in anything that's approved after this end date here. So let's just make it the end, and I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And if I scroll down here, you can see my 3 and 4 automatically pull in for me. He can bill against those 2 line items. Like I said, we're going to cover the pay estimates in more detail next week, so we'll take another look at that again and kind of how to proceed from there. But that's really the change order life cycle. You have something come in, you realize it's going to be a risk, you track it with your risk tab or sticky before it's kind of actually a realized risk. You can use that information and attach that to any of the documents. Once you guys realize it's a more solidified risk or a more realistic risk, you can change that risk item into a change order, a potential change order. And once those numbers have been finalized, you roll up those change orders or the potential change orders into a change order itself. So change order request or potential change orders get rolled up into that change order. As you're going through your risk items, that 15, it's a realized risk. So really what I want to do is close that item out, and then it's going to drop off my summary, right? It's still available. Of course, I can review it. It's under those closed risk items, but it really drops off your risk summary here, so you can kind of keep tabs on what exactly is coming down the pipeline. The risk item is really there to track things that haven't become a CCR or a potential change order yet. All right, so let's look at reporting. There are a couple different ways. Of course, we have the reporting tab, and I'm going to go over this relatively quickly because, reporting on documents is similar across all documents. Those columns that you have, if I click edit on this particular one, those columns that you have down here to add, they're going to be dependent on what documents you're reporting on. I do want to highlight a couple that you may not be familiar with. One is that total risk amount. So you're not going to use that when you're reporting on risk. You're going to use that when you're reporting on another document. And what it does is it pulls in that total risk amount when you've linked that risk to the other document. So if we just take a quick look at how this particular report is set up, I've got change orders, so I'm reporting on those. I've got my pending and closed. And then I have that total risk amount as well as the amount for the change order. So when I go ahead and run this, I'm going to see a couple columns. So I see my amount, which is the amount of that particular change order, right? So there's our October 2014. There's my total change order amount. And you know what? I didn't link those risks in to that particular change order. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. So we'll come over here to our change order. And let's just flag it with that risk. And okay, let's flag it with that risk. It was 15, so I'm going to go ahead and flag it. So it was 15, and then there was another one, I think. Let's look and see what that CCR number 3 had linked to it. There it is. It's got number 6. Okay, so let's link 6 to it as well. There it is. And then when we come back to our report, you've got your total risk amount there too. So in this case, you can kind of keep an eye on what you would potentially thought it was going to be and the amount that either eventually got approved or in this particular case is still pending, right? So you can kind of keep track of what you were expecting versus what the amount is so far. Most of your financial reporting you're probably not going to be doing under the Report tab because we've got a lot of unique characteristics in the summary grids. So I just want to highlight a couple. For contract, for example, if we take a quick look here, I've got the default here, but I've got 2 other ones set up. I've got time change. So if you were tracking time, you can highlight several different columns on your grid and include them on a different view. In this one, I've got the time change. So I've got my contract date, I've got duration, I've got the compensable days and non-compensable days that were added. I've got my new duration. So if we just take a quick look at that construction contract that we're looking at today, 4 compensable days, my new duration right here, and then my project completion date. So that's going to be kind of the new project completion date. The other view I've got here is the contract changes, so that's a little bit more pertinent to what we were looking at today. I've got my anticipated change order dollar amount, so anything that's pending. We kind of closed all of ours out on that construction one. They're all approved right now, but we've got one here that's pending. And then I've got the approved change order percentage, and then I've got risk items pending. So, oops, didn't mean to start by that. Got your risk items pending, your exposure, which is actually going to be, and it lists it when you create the grid, and I'll just show you in a second. It's actually your risk items that are pending, your CCR items that are pending, and your CCR items that are approved. You've got your change order limit. So in this particular one, it was the, this is our contract construction. It's $5 million, and this is the amount over. Obviously, the negative amount, we haven't gone over our change order limit yet, which is exactly what we're hoping for. To customize any of these grids that you see here, you're going to click this Customize button, and then you get a variety of different options. So also, depending on which level you are, I didn't really drill down, but I will in a second, or drill back up, you're going to get different columns under the optional section here. So if I remove that exposure, I can come down here and I can take a look. See, it lists all of kind of the relevant information there. I changed it just so it would be a little bit smaller in the view there, but you can see what the exposure entails. And again, you've got a lot of different columns here. You're probably going to be able to find exactly what you're looking for. You've got a lot of different options there. Another place that you can kind of review your changes is going to be under the CCR tab or PCO tab, depending on what you call it. Again, you've got that summary view, so you can select it, and you can kind of view all the entire account, all of your CCRs, PCOs across the entire account, and then you can drill down. So we're in Kings Landing Division, so I'm going to select that. I'm going to go down a little further to my capital program, and then I've got several projects in here. So I could go to a specific project. We're in the water treatment plant. If I click on that, that's going to give me a different view. I kind of want to look across my entire program and just take a look across all of them. I can group by contract. So if I group my contract together, there's all the ones that we were working on today. There's 3 and 4. Actually, let's sort sequentially. All right, so we can take a look. There's 4, which is the one we did today. You'll notice here I've got this cost savings. What that does is it takes a look at my risk items. So remember, it was $50,000, and it subtracts the amount for that CCR, so the $44,000. So I estimated it was going to be $50,000, but I'm saving $6,000 because we selected a version that the contractor submitted, a proposal that the contractor submitted that was less than that $50,000. So, you can kind of show that as a CM team. You can kind of show that to your owner as far as what you were expecting costs to be and what they actually turned out to be. Again, you have the ability to customize, and let's see, that's the only one I wanted to show you guys. You have the ability to customize your views. You can certainly share them, across the entire project team to kind of see things. Obviously, the risk items, those are going to be different for everybody, so that cost savings column is going to show different for everybody as well. And of course, on the change order tab itself, you certainly have that summary capability there too, and you can again drill down, drill up, and kind of track everything across. I'm looking at the default, but again, you can customize, and you've got a variety of different options to include on your summary there. All right, so that kind of covers the reporting on your changes, on your contract changes. And I guess we didn't really cover too much of the risk, but again, you've got a grid here. You can customize it and incorporate some different columns into that